What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and we're back with another vehicle testing video. I don't know what to call these anymore because you don't really build cars in the Crew Motorfest. But today we're putting the two racing cars that we got in the Season 6 update head to head. I'm going to show you their test times, I'm going to show you their test runs, and I'm going to show you a head-to-head comparison in the Grand Races on the exact same course. So, is it going to be this KTM? Or is it going to be the Ferrari 488? I don't know. Let's go. All right, first let's talk about the stats of each of these cars. These cars could not be closer on paper. You have both mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars. You have both the same power to weight ratio, which is about a third, or 33%. Then you also have the same top speed at 249 each. You have the acceleration, which is only 0.07 of a second off. And then the braking is actually the part where they're the most different. The 488 actually has better braking at 13.7 yards, and the KTM has a 14.9. But the lateral G is exactly the same at 1.45. So these cars, in theory, should handle almost identically, but from my experience, that is not the case. The 488 absolutely feels like it understeers more. I think it's just slightly more sluggish when it comes to turn-in. And in comparison to the KTM, which is extremely sensitive, the car wants to feel like a go-kart because that's kind of what it is. It's got a really short wheelbase and it hugs the turns. When you're in the turn, it seems like it's going to understeer. You can feel the front wheels slip, but the car actually grips. It's very interesting. It's different. It handles very, very well, much better than its 1.45 lateral G. So you would think that that car is going to be faster. However, on my test course, which is staying ahead, these cars are almost identical. You've got the Expo running a 236.299 and the 488 GT3 running a 237.3. They're off by only 1 second, and they're right next to each other on my leaderboard. So what is the difference? What is happening with these two cars, and how do they feel different in the Grand Races? Well, here is a side-by-side comparison to them in the Grand Races. I'm going to analyze my driving because obviously that is something that we have to take into account here. And I'm going to show you what I think actually is happening. So let's take a look at that. All right, so real quick before we get into this portion of the video, I'm comparing these two cars in the same exact scenario in the Grand Races. I'm starting near the front on both of these Grand Races. This is exactly the same path. However, we have the variable of other players, so we can't really draw any conclusions to the total time that it takes each of these cars to get to the car transition, because that's as far as I recorded. What we can talk about is how they take certain corners, how they take gutters, how they brake, how they accelerate, and that's what we're going to talk about. So let me go through this a little bit with you guys so you can see exactly the differences between these two cars. We also have to take into consideration that even though I was the driver in both cars, driver error obviously plays a little bit of a part. So the first thing I want to talk about is the start. If you go back to the acceleration, the KTM had a worse acceleration, but who is in front by the time they get to this first checkpoint? Right now, you've got 23 yards versus 35 yards. The KTM is actually 12 yards ahead of the 488. Now, obviously, this guy is bumping, but this is not going to be enough. We're all accelerating at full speed. They're both at 124 miles per hour. They're both accelerating at the same speed, but the KTM got there quicker. So the thing is, I know this is like, he's bumping, whatever, but everybody's going forward. That's not going to make a difference of 12 yards. So he gets there to that first checkpoint faster. He's also faster to the second checkpoint, 16 to 21. However, if you notice, the gap has closed. This is now only 5 yards. So the 488 has sort of picked it up, and at 169 and 168, they're both really similar in terms of speed. Now, when we go into this first corner, I believe this is the first corner where I get speared with the KTM. I was in the gutter, and then boom. All right, so right there, the race is pretty much over between the two. We can't really compare the checkpoints anymore, but I want to talk about the corners. So let's go forward a little bit to the corner. We have some really, really good racers in this one. So this first corner, I kind of struggle with the gutter a little bit with the KTM, but I figure it out. If we go back to the 488, 488 gets in it and then falls out immediately. So I will say this, I was a little bit struggling with both, but the KTM felt a little easier to keep in the gutter. As you see, I did keep it in there. So now if we go to the next checkpoint, obviously the 488 is a little bit of ahead. And then in this one, this is important. The 488 is squarely in the gutter here. Like, I was in the gutter, full turn, all the way in, and I fell out. It didn't hook at all. Like, not even a little bit. The KTM, I don't even know if I got the gutter. Let's see. I didn't even get the gutter. But look, I didn't even have to get the gutter. We were going around the same speed. Like, I'm in this corner at 196 with the KTM. 196 versus the... Let me back up. Around the same speed for the 488. But the 488 drops to 171 because it drops in the dirt. The KTM doesn't. Stays on the road. Much better turning radius with the KTM. And that's probably why the gutters are better. We go to this next corner. Let's just skip this corner. I did it bad on both of them. We hit the wall. I get speared again by some random player. And the gap just gets wider. So let's talk about these gutters here. This one I really had to feather to try to stay in it. KTM was full throttle. Now we're really going to get to see some of these gutters if we fast forward a little bit here. This one is pretty indicative of how the car handles. I was able to get into it with the KTM. Excuse me, with the 488. I stayed in it and oversteered it. Same situation here, but the KTM was much smoother coming out. Now with this one, let me back up a little bit. We're going to watch the 488 for this corner first. In the gutter, nice and stable. A little bit too far in the gutter. Had to pull it out a little bit on the end. The KTM, on the other hand, I completely missed the gutter. So, bad corner to compare. Let's move on. Let's look at this corner here. Missed it with this one. Maybe one of these times I'll get the same gutter. KTM hugged the gutter. Super nice, man. It was very, very nice. I think I'm just hammering home the exact same point, which is that the guttering ability of the KTM is much better. The acceleration of the KTM, much better. And the 488 is just having a problem staying in those gutters. Again, 488 in the gutter, babying it. KTM full throttle, gets it right through. I actually oversteered a little bit on that on the exit. Now, there's another turn. I want to fast forward here because it's pretty boring in these little parts here. But I want to fast forward to a part where the 488 actually understeers a corner, or not understeers it, but doesn't take it quite as well as the KTM, because the cornering ability seems a little bit better on the KTM. So let me get to that corner. All right, so it's this corner that's coming up here. You guys might know it if you recognize the route, but it's a slight left into a hard right. And it's not really a hard right, but it's a more sharp right. And if you're taking it at full speed, it's much more difficult to make the corner. So with the 488, I'm at 260 entering, turn it in, barely make it. Wheel drops into the gutter. With the KTM, I'm entering it with a little bit less speed. I don't have the slipstream of the other player, and I turn in way late and easily make the corner. So check this out. I turn in way late, easily make the corner, not even close to the gutter, not even close to the other gutter. It just turns in much, much better. And with a little bit of NOS, no slipstream, I'm able to get up to 253 directly after it by the next corner. So let me see where I was with this one. 268. Again, with slipstream, there's a guy behind me on this one. So now we've got 268 slipstream. The solo pace of the KTM is staying right around 245 to 245 to 250. With NOS, I'm able to get up to 258. With slipstream, we're at 269. The KTM does go up to 268 with slipstream. So in terms of just overall performance and overall feeling of the cars, I much prefer the KTM. And this example is a little bit less of an example than I wanted to show you, but it's what I could do with the way the game is structured. It's not like we can just take it on grand races and pick our routes. So anyways, that is it for that comparison. Guys, I believe that even though these cars are almost identical in stats, I think the KTM is the winner here. It is slightly better at basically everything, with the exception maybe of top speed. It might be losing by 1 mile an hour, 2 miles an hour. The KTM is by far the way to go. Unless you get stuck on a highway, then it's tough. Now, to compare this to the best cars in the class, which happen to be the T50, I still think the T50 is better. It's overall, all around, just a better car. However, the KTM is definitely usable. If you look at the test times, they're really, really close. The T50 is a 235.8 and the Expo is a 236.2. So they're off by about 0.4 of a second. Then you've got the 488 at a 237.3, which is not very far off again. So these cars are just so close. But I would say that over time, I think the KTM is going to earn a place in the Grand Race meta conversation, probably because of its NOS power and its acceleration and its ability to take gutters. It has all of those three things going for it. And that is a recipe for success when you have lots of back-to-back-to-back hairpins where you have to be in the gutter all the time. Anyways, that's it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Hopefully this has helped you in some way. And if it has, consider subscribing. This is what I do on Motorfest. Thanks, guys. I will catch you on the next one. Trigger out.